views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Phi Labs or the Archway Protocol. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm your host, Valeria Salazar, joined with co-host Max McKendry.
Hey, happy to be back again. We're still doing it. Love it.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a busy week after ETH Denver and everything, but we're ready to hop back into the news cycle. So up first with proposals in the Cosmos ecosystem. So up first, we have a draft proposal for the Cosmos Hub about the IBC repo. So it's nominating Strangelove Ventures as the maintainer coordinator of the IBC Go repo, just to make sure that, merges and efforts being made in developing IBC are all considered a little bit faster and really just, not lost in the cracks.
With IBC, we want something that's standard, right? That everyone can use to communicate. So this makes perfect sense to me to have a group that's all kind of maintaining that repo so that, to your point, things aren't getting lost in the cracks. There's not, these different branches being built all over the place, and that we can have this coordinated effort to create a standard that kind of complies with all the different chains. This is a great step towards that, because now we can have multiple different views on what merges should be made, and we can approve pull requests in a much more efficient manner. So all in all, this is good for the broader IBC ecosystem and the Cosmos in general. So happy to see this passed.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember just like earlier last year, we had like 3 or 4 different teams working on different versions and different implementations of interchain queries. And, that it's a lot better when you kind of collaborate and, have different devs across the world working on one product as opposed to different iterations of it. So I'm glad to see that. And I'm happy to see Strangelove take care of it, just because, they've done fantastic work on interchain queries and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's an open source protocol. You want to see that it's multiple different contributors contributing. So this is exactly what the initial vision was for the hub. Would that be? It'd be maintained by multiple different teams, different people, and it's finally starting to happen in a way that I think makes a ton of sense. So,
yeah, absolutely. Up next, we have Proposal 187, which passed earlier this week, which was essentially just the Lambda upgrade for the Cosmos Hub. So that is the upgrade that will enable replicated security, which is the first iteration of ICS.
Yep. And I believe right now they also have Prop 687 up as well, which will be for a third-party audit of that shared security implementation. So I imagine no consumer chains will go live until that audit is passed. But the Lambda upgrade was successful. And so now the hub has the ability to basically provide shared security. This is a huge step, something that I remember hearing about almost, a year plus ago, just the idea of it. And to see it finally come to fruition is really cool and a big step for the hub.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how fast things are moving. And speaking to that audit, so if the proposal passes, it'll be done in around 3 weeks, and it'll take around 3 weeks to get done, and it'll be conducted by Oak Security. So hopefully, that passes and we can get a third-party audit on there.
Yeah. I imagine it will. I think everyone who's invested in either the Atom token or just wants to see the hub succeed knows that having a third-party audit is always a good idea. It's nice to have internal audits done, but you want to really make sure things that are going to affect the larger ecosystem are done well and done correct. So any additional help is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oak Securities is quite a reputable partner. So,
yeah. And then on to the next thing that I think is interesting. We've touched on this now maybe 2 or 3 weeks in a row, but spam proposals, they are continuing to plague the Cosmos ecosystem. Almost every chain by now has seen a litany of different spam proposals come across. They're fairly easy to spot, but still quite a nuisance.
Definitely. We've had a couple of figures such as Jacob Kadikian tweet out some possible solutions. Some people have cited, making sure that the person proposing has staked assets for that network in order to propose, so that they have so they are subject to a lockup period in case they want to spam the network. Other people have suggested validator approvals before proposals allowed to go out, or limiting proposal submissions to just validators. So personally, I think that these solutions can, be a little bit harmful if not done correctly. So there need to be some parameters to make sure that this is still open and accessible to community members, because that is the beauty of the Cosmos ecosystem is that it's open to everybody. So, yeah.
I mean, I pretty much is going to echo the same thing. I think there certainly needs to be something done to like fix this problem. But at the same time, I don't think it makes sense to make it so only validators can submit a proposal, or that a validator will have to approve a proposal. Because at that point, you're kind of censoring the broader community. It's hard enough to garner enough deposits to even get something on chain for vote if you're not a very big player or don't have a lot of connections. So I get what we're trying to do. We're trying to avoid the spam, but at the same time, you don't want to create a scenario where now it becomes almost insurmountable for the average user to submit a prop, because that kind of takes away the whole idea of this open source, community and being able to have everybody have a say.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And then going into the Cosmos ecosystem, this week was the Hub's 4th birthday.
Well, happy birthday to the Hub. 4 years. That's pretty wild to think about. I mean, that's not that old, but it's come a long, long way. I think Bitcoin is pushing what, 12? No, probably even 15.
That's right. Wow. Yeah, no. The Hub is young, but it's going strong. So it's really great to see like everything that's been accomplished in these 4 really short years.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of this horizontal scaling and this hub and spoke model that they built out seemed like kind of a pipe dream, maybe I guess 4 years ago. It was just in its infancy. I remember reading about it and being like, this makes a lot of sense on paper. And now here we are down the road, and it seems like they made a lot of the right decisions from a technical perspective with the Cosmos SDK. And here we are in year 4, heading into year 5, and well on our way to, I think, expanding and really broadening, how much the SDK is being used. So awesome thing to celebrate, and congrats.
Yeah, definitely. So up next we have Kujira Stables. So Kujira has announced that they are now building a framework so that teams can come in and easily build and deploy collateralized stablecoins. So they have not given a date for when this will be coming out, but essentially it'll let teams set collateral parameters, and then Kujira will take care of price feeds, liquidations, and all that stuff.
Yeah, this could be quite a risky endeavor. I think it's really cool that they're providing the tooling to make it very accessible and easy for someone to launch their own stable, especially being able to denominate it in different either currencies and hopefully even off-chain commodities at some point. And then obviously I really like the idea of being able to choose your own collateral. I mean, everyone has different risk profiles, definitely have different views on what is considered volatile and not volatile. So it's really cool that they're giving the users that opportunity, but it's also very risky in my opinion. You're going to put a lot of people who may not have a strong understanding of how much, use case these have or how secure they really are, put at risk. But at the same time, they have a liquidation engine that is going to profit and distribute those rewards, or I guess fees, collected to stakers of the Kuji token. So strictly from the actual protocol's perspective and the stakers, it's probably a really good idea. They'll probably create a lot of on-chain activity and probably a lot of liquidations overall. So
yeah, I think it's considering the current climate around stablecoins in the last year or so, you'd think that, teams would be a little bit more aware or a little bit more careful around any initiatives regarding stablecoins, right? But again, we'll see how it comes out. This is just, very just an announcement of an idea. So nothing has been built on yet.
You're giving users more autonomy, right? So it is a cool thing, and it's up to the user themselves or the people who are purchasing these collateralized stables to do their own due diligence and to really make sure that what they are putting their money into is backed with solid collateral and that the peg makes sense. So at a certain point, you do have to put it back on the actual users to make those decisions for themselves and just allow people to build. So I think they're doing that with Kujira, so I can appreciate the idea for sure. And then I next want to talk about the newest podcast that is coming to the Cosmos, and it's going to be focused strictly on Atom, called Atom Zone. So it sounds like this will be either a podcast or a space that's going to be hosted by 2 prominent community members. Many know Crypto Cedo, and the other is Rob Stack. Rob is a guy that I've definitely interacted with a ton in the space over the last 2 or 3 years. Don't know him personally, but really respect his his thoughts in the space, and his contributions. So it's going to be cool to have a very Atom focused discussion. It's the hub for a reason. A lot of the core concepts that we build out on these different app chains and layer ones are based on the hub. And therefore, I think it's important that we're all kind of in the loop on what's happening, and just very, I guess, open to the public on what's happening so that there's no question marks, and we have this transparency.
Yeah, absolutely. The first one took place yesterday on the 14th for the Lambda upgrade, and it's going to be every Tuesday from here on out at 4 p.m. UTC on Twitter Spaces. So I'm looking forward to those discussions on the Cosmos Hub's Twitter account. So
yeah,
definitely something.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll have fruitful conversations and also a lot of really good guests. If there's one thing that CryptoCito does, it is round up the guests and get them on his show. He does an amazing job at finding the most important people in the space and sitting them down and having really good conversations. So broadly, this is just a big plus for everybody involved.
Yeah, definitely. Up next, we have Uniswap coming to Cosmos via Kava. So the second proposal of the 3 proposals necessary to actually launch Uniswap on Kava has recently passed. So it looks like Uniswap is coming to Cosmos very soon.
Seems to be a trend. Whether they've moved their full actual application over to their own layer one, like DYDX, or kind of what SushiSwap recently did by purchasing a DEX that was already existing in the Cosmos. And now we have Uniswap deploying on top of Kava. So yeah, there seems to be a trend. A lot of these large DEXs from the Ethereum space are seeing an opportunity in the Cosmos. And it's cool. It's cool to see, one, that they're seeing the opportunity, and 2, for the Cosmos itself, it'll be nice to get some liquidity brought in.
Yeah, definitely. They'll be using Kava's liquid staking protocol, as well as, they cited exposure into the Cosmos ecosystem as one of the reasons that they wanted to come in there. So definitely looking forward to what Uniswap does within the Cosmos. Yeah.
And I'm also looking forward to what Stride is bringing to the table with their rate limit module. So this is a really cool upgrade that they'll be doing. It's an IBC rate limit. And this will essentially help to protect users' funds when a attack may happen and they're draining funds and maybe large chunks are moving. They can actually have a trigger that will block those transactions from happening to prevent a rug of a liquidity pool or a staking contract. So it's a really big, in my eyes, a really big implementation, and hopefully this will become more standard.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that Stride cited in its roadmap earlier this year are quite innovative. And this is just one of the many initiatives that they'll be bringing on in the next year or two that are really changing the game and putting security at its forefront and making sure that users are really prioritized. So love to see it. Yeah.
And it seems like the innovation in the Cosmos is just continuing to build. It seems like every time you're talking to a new team, they have something really unique about their project that's going to move it forward. And I guess Berachain is no different. They recently launched Polaris. And it sounds like this is going to be their almost replacement to Ethermint. It's going to be its own, I guess, ground up built Ethereum virtual machine. And it's going to have some pretty unique features to it that make it, I guess, a little bit faster, but then more importantly, a little bit easier from a user experience standpoint to build an app chain on the Cosmos SDK or really any consensus layer.
Yeah, so currently they cite it as a blockchain framework designed specifically for Cosmos SDK to implement the EVM. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this and seeing how it plays out and see if it's more widely adopted. Yeah,
and that's going to be the question, right? Ethermint didn't necessarily succeed as much as I think a lot of people thought it would. So it's really cool that Berachain's kind of taken a new, fresh look at it and trying to build out their own version. But again, it comes back to how much demand is there for this. And I guess we'll find out here in the next 6 months to a year. But I definitely appreciate teams who take that leap of faith and really build up their own product to prove out that what they have is really unique and can be innovative and used broadly instead of something that already exists. I think we get caught up sometimes in this space with just reusing something that already exists because it's there, instead of really just taking a step back and saying, does this make a lot of sense? So props to the Berachain for that.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that Ethermint, it was early as well. Now that, Cosmos has reached its fourth birthday and it's now getting a little bit more recognition. And, us recently at East Denver, we talked to people and they're like, yeah, I've been meaning to get into the Cosmos ecosystem, but not a lot of people really had. I think now it's really going to be, Cosmos is going to see its moment under the sun. And that's really when EVM compatibility will become a little bit more interesting to dApps looking to migrate into the Cosmos ecosystem without necessarily building on Cosmosm or any of the other like smart contracts, frameworks that already exist. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to see it. Like I said, the Cosmos is big enough for many, many teams to succeed. Many, many different smart contract languages, many different VMs. I mean, it's really built. This space is just getting started. So I don't think it's any sort of ill will between, for example, a chain that uses Cosmosm versus EVM. I don't think they're fighting for necessarily the same people. I think they're really, really broad audiences that are looking for both of those things. So happy to have all of them in the Cosmos, because the more we can offer, the more people are willing to come.
100%. And now looking outside the Cosmos, the last week has seen a huge fall in banks, traditional banks that service the crypto ecosystem. So on March 8th, we saw Silvergate close its doors after trying to keep afloat after the whole FTX debacle. And then March 9th saw SVB forced to sell off over 21 billion in US Treasury assets and eventually announced the second biggest bank failure in the history of the US economy. So that did not bode very well. And then on March 12th, Signature shut down because of systemic risk. So yeah, it was a very overwhelming weekend for the whole crypto industry.
Yeah, I mean, this is a massive shakeup to the crypto industry, but really just like the broader, I guess, startup industry. A lot of VC funds, a lot of startups, even outside of the Web3 space and the traditional Web2 space, were impacted by this. This is a major event. This is causing a lot of teams to potentially lose the runway that they had, or to even prevent some teams from being able to make payroll the following week. So this is definitely a scary situation for a lot of people. I'm hoping that there's a way that they can kind of resolve this in a way that people are made whole, and ideally made whole quickly. You'd think that when you put your money in a bank, it would be safe. I know they have FDIC insurance for a reason, but a lot of these times you're really counting on these banks to be taking the risk seriously and properly hedging against certain things. So when you see a major bank collapse like this, it's a scary sight to everyone. And it's really just scary from the broader economic standpoint, because we've seen things like this before with major banks collapsing during, I think it was the 08-09 subprime mortgage debacle. So this isn't necessarily a good sign in general for our economy, but then how badly it's impacting just founders in the crypto space as well is just exacerbated even more. So it's just a tough situation for everybody, and really unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, on March 13th, regulators confirmed that all depositors of both SVB and Signature would have full access to deposits with no losses that would be borne by taxpayers. So whether or not they're insured, because I think not all assets were insured in both banks. So all of them will be fully recoverable at some point in time, and regulators would make sure that would take place. But it is very scary. And, just to see that this kind of just happens from one day to the next, right? Because the big thing that caused SVB to have this bank failure was that they were forced to sell off their treasury assets, and then VCs alerted their clients like, "Oh, start withdrawing your funds. It looks like there's something going on here." And it was that massive withdrawal of funds that really triggered the bank failure, because you having all these people remove their funds all at once is not sustainable for any bank, really.
Yeah, and that's really the main point that I think a lot of people are lost on, is that most banks, in fact, almost all banks, are fractionally reserved in the sense that what they have liquid available to withdraw is not going to be the full deposit amount. So when you have these bank runs where there's this massive run to literally the banks or to the ATMs to pull out cash, they're sometimes in a position, like you said, where they have to unwind positions or liquidate different securities or assets that they have as collateral. And sometimes, like in this situation, they have to take large losses on these. For example, if you took out a 10-year treasury bill when rates are at 1%, well, you're not gonna be able to sell that dollar for dollar now that you could get 5%. So it really puts the banks in a bad position if they're not hedged appropriately, where they might even end up in a position where they don't have enough assets to back all the deposits. I don't think that's the case with most of the banks that are currently going under, but that's always a risk that's out there, and it really makes you think about the narrow banking idea, and if that's something that we really should get back to, where you have 100% back deposits liquid, ready to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the most appalling part to me in all of this is the Fed's solution to this. They came up with a new program called the Bank Term Funding Program. And essentially, this offers banks under collateralized loans. So basically, loans based on the future promise of repayment, which, if it sounds familiar and rings a bell, it's because that sounds a lot like the definition of a promissory note, which was kind of that last little straw for FTX. So I'm not really sure what the parameters with this program will be, and you know how this will be addressed. But to me personally, it doesn't seem like a step in the correct direction.
It seems like we're adding more risk to an already very risky and fragile situation. I am not even close to an expert in this, so I can't speak too much on it. But just broadly, and my personal feelings off of hearing that, I would say sounds very risky that we're basically banking on recovery, and that in the future they'll have this collateral available. And I don't think that's ever a guarantee. So
definitely. And then this whole situation this past week caused USDC to depeg, and it actually made it down all the way to 82 cents on the dollar. So Circle held some of its reserve accounts in these 3 banks, and it left only 5 banks of the issuers unaffected. So,
yeah, anytime you see a USDC depeg, it's a little concerning. Same with USDT. I've been around for a few bear markets. They typically depeg at some point, and you just kind of hope it's going to recover. This was no different. I saw USDC depegged. I didn't personally participate and buy any. I was more hands off, just letting the situation resolve itself. But I know a lot of people were very much confident it would get back to that dollar peg. What I found interesting, though, is that I think only 8% of USDC's backing was actually held at Silicon Valley Bank, but they were basically pricing it in initially as if it was 100% lost, right? So 8% is there, and it dropped down to below, I think, 92 cents to 90, and then even lower than that. And to me, that's just kind of a weird way to value the token, right? There was no way that they were going to get $0 back. So for the market to price it so low, just didn't make a lot of sense from a intrinsic value standpoint. So that's where I was very confident. I think I even tweeted, I think it will be back up to peg or close to within a few days. And so far it has. That doesn't mean we don't have another black swan event that could disrupt it. But personally, yeah, it just seems like a lot of overreaction in the market. And this goes for the whole market. I mean, we saw it with bank runs as well. It's once people get a little bit of fear, the herd mentality really just piles on and people start going one direction, so much as to discount USDC almost 20% below peg, despite only 8% of its collateral backing being at risk. So,
yeah. And I think this goes to show that just like, 20, 30 years ago, if a bank experienced some turmoil or some issues in their balance sheets and stuff like that, the average person wasn't really aware of this. So the bank didn't really experience these like severe fluctuations in assets or in deposits and things like that. Whereas now, because of the wider access to information and technology, people have more of a control over the information that they have, but also like an access to their financial instruments in the financial markets. So you're able to withdraw funds immediately through online banking and things like that. So it's a lot easier to affect markets, and it's a lot easier to kind of like have one piece of news kind of create this type of black swan event. So I don't think that the issue was so much that what percentage of the assets were affected. I think it was just the fact that the market saw an opportunity to take advantage of a situation, and it did. And then, it wasn't so much the risk as much as it was like the FUD.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think it really just comes down to access to information. And so many people have access to information immediately now. and they're very instantaneous in their actions. They don't really have to think about it or sit on it before they go into the bank the next day or call the teller later on. They can just go straight in their phone and start withdrawing money. And that cuts both ways, right? Like that's part of the crypto ethos is you should have access to your money whenever you want it, and you should be able to move it around as needed. And I agree with that 100%. It just sometimes can cause people to make reactionary decisions. But that's part of the learning process of having access to something 24/7 is you have to understand your emotions and make sure that those aren't what driving your decisions. So yeah, I mean, in general, I think that having access to your stuff and your assets immediately is important. But it can absolutely exacerbate situations where there's mass panic. And the final note of the day is that the Attorney General filed a motion against KuCoin, essentially saying it did not register as a securities broker. On top of that, they also pretty much mentioned that Ethereum is likely to be considered a security. I think this is the first time we've seen this actually stated that Ethereum would be a security in a court document. As far as I know, Bitcoin is the only token that has been considered a commodity. Many thought that Ethereum would be considered one as well. But this kind of upends that thought. And it really points the finger at KuCoin as saying, hey, you guys are the securities broker and everything on there is a security. So it's mounting evidence for the, I guess, SEC that these are securities. And that's something I don't think is a good thing overall for the industry. But I also don't think that they've done a really robust look into these and whether or not they're really securities. They're kind of blanket statementing right now.
Yeah, I think Gensler has previously stated that all tokens are considered securities under U.S. jurisdiction. And I think a lot of that, the reason Bitcoin is not considered a security and it's considered a commodity is because it's not a staking token. So the moment that you're able to earn an interest on a token, I think that's when the SEC really comes in and says, okay, this does not pass the Howey test because you are making a profit or something like that based on the efforts of others. But then it goes into the fact that there's a bunch of other parts of the test that may or may not really comply. So yeah, I think that this is, it's disappointing, but it's not unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's perfect. It's disappointing, but not unexpected. That hits the nail on the head. And it really just comes down to finding out what the final decision is so that we can move forward and really start to shape regulation around this industry. Because I think most people want to do stuff by the books. They want to be in compliance. It's just getting that direction. Hopefully we can, get some answers from this case. And ideally they'll do a good job defending KuCoin are doing a good job defending themselves and why they are not a securities broker. But ultimately, we just need to get some answers. It's been dragging on for a long time, and there's still so much uncertainty.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Anyway, that's all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, enjoyed it for sure, and can't wait to be on. See you guys next week.